Last week, my 6-year-old granddaughter stayed with me for a few days, and she watched the movie Free Willy. In the last 10 minutes of the movie, she became so enthusiastic and so excited that she was throwing her arms out, throwing her legs out, jumping from couch to floor to hassock, all over the room. Go, Willie! Go, go, Willie, go! It was beautiful to see. That evening, I don't remember what brought the topic up, but she said, Grammy, I don't want you to die soon. And I said, well, I'm not planning to, but when the time comes, I hope that when people are crying at my funeral, that you will jump up and down, run around and yell, go, Grammy, go. You know.
Perfect.
And
Perfect.
I also told her mother, my daughter, treat it like I'm going off to Europe on a vacation, or I'm going to a great university or something like that. Now, I do understand that who we really are is pure, positive, perfect energy. I completely accept that. I do understand that this body dies and gets buried or whatever, but what I don't know is what happens to the unresolved stuff that isn't, like at the moment that you die, that isn't yet pure positive energy and yet isn't just the body. The negative energies like anger, sadness, disappointment, I mean, does that live on? And if so, in what state? And how does it manifest?
Well, every thought that has ever been thought still exists. And law of attraction manages those thoughts. In other words, in the same way that birds of a feather flock together, thoughts of a feather flock together. And so there are energy streams, but your vantage point is no longer contributing to them. And so if you were the only one that ever thought them, they would sort of dissipate and become inactive. But others may join the stream and keep them activated. Here is a way of approaching it. As you think a thought, then that thought is, and then that thought thinks. In other words, the thinker thinks the thought, and then the new thought becomes the thinker, because everything is vibrating, which means everything is attracting unto itself. But a thought has to have been thought upon quite a bit to become a manifestation or to become an energy like consciousness that comes forth into your body. So it takes a lot of contributors of thought to a thought before it is big enough that it takes form or begins to replicate itself in terms of mass consciousness. So in answer to your question, it would depend upon how many others are activating the thought. When you make that transition back into non-physical, you become all that you are. In other words, you are now the cumulative vantage point of your inner being and all that you've gained even in this physical experience. But all your doubts and fears, all of those things are just left behind. They are no longer a part of your active vibration.
What happens to them?
They exist in a vibrational state where anyone who gets in the vibrational vicinity of them may pick them up. In other words, they can be passed on from generation to generation in the same way that this woman who has been calling down, don't look anymore, is no longer in that house calling it down. Jerry and Esther are keeping that fun alive. And so if someone picks it up and continues to activate it, then it remains. Otherwise, it is dormant.
Is there a third portion besides the body and what you might call the soul or pure positive energy, the God self? Is there a third part that lives on?
Well, it isn't in that way, and rather than a third part, we'd rather call it millions of parts. In other words,
Okay.
because it's not, but we understand what you're saying. There is the physical you and there is the non-physical you, but what happens with all of that thought that you thought, that personality that swirls around you? In other words, what happens to it? And we say, for the most part, it dissipates, because when you are no longer actively within it, attracting to it, it dissipates. But there are those, like Elvis, in other words, that part of him will live on for a very long time. He is more alive today in that sense than he ever has been. That's why there will be a ghost in a house or something like that, because those who are still physically focused keep that thought form activated by their attention to it, you see. It's not a very important part of all of this. It's the reason we don't talk about it very much. It's often the part that a psychic will tap into. When someone says, oh, I'm getting your dead mother, and she says to tell you that she hid it in the cookie jar and she's still worried about you being married to that guy, we say, that's not who she is. That's not where she is. What's being activated is the thought form that surrounded her, and part of it is being gleaned from the expectation that you still hold or you still remember about her. You have to understand that everything is energy, and energy is only seen by humans as you are able to interpret it through your physical senses. And so there are a whole lot of dimensions that are happening here. We are all sort of zigging and zagging, intertwining with one another that you have no idea are happening because you are not translating it necessarily through your physical senses. Every thought that has ever been thought still exists, and you have potential access to it. The question is, are you, the activator or the potential activator, somewhere in the vibrational range of it? And so, if you are, then you may activate it. You may participate with it. That's why a room full of people could be here, and a ghost could walk right through this room. And some of you would see it, and some of you wouldn't. And so then the question would be, well, was it real or wasn't it? And we say, it's like all of these thought forms. They are as real as you are able to interpret them or read them. So our answer to your question, which is on the whole unsatisfying, is everything exists and nothing goes away. But there is a much bigger question, and that is, are you activating it and participating with it? When you reemerge into non-physical, you don't continue to participate with anything that is lonely, or anything that is angry, or anything that is what you would call in your physical human terms negative in nature, you see.
So everything that is real is pure positive energy, and the rest is illusion?
Well, it's all real. We would not try to call it real or unreal. We would call it perceived or unperceived in the moment. We would call it activated or not in the moment. So there are many things that are realities that we, from our non-physical point of view, acknowledge are realities. We do not deny the reality of cancer in a human body, but we also do not activate it and therefore participate within it. We don't give our attention to it, and therefore we do not become a part of it. We don't encourage it, we don't support it, we don't add unto it, even though we acknowledge that it is a reality that someone is living. There are all kinds of truths that you don't necessarily want to activate. And the difference between the physically focused you and the non-physically focused you is that out here on the leading edge of physical dum-dum-dum, you are willing to participate in things for the purpose of giving birth to new ideas. You are more on the ragged, bleeding edge, leading edge, so to speak, of thought. You knew that you would be. You liked the idea of it. You came forth with guidance, and that's where we come in. In other words, if we joined you in your negative thought, then you would not feel the separation between you and you. So the very negative emotion that you feel is your indicator that you've gone vibrationally into a thought where your source did not go. And the emptiness that feels like negative emotion is your indicator that you've stepped just a little out of range, of who you really, really are, you see. But it does not make it less real. What you're wanting to do is call the non-physical world the real world and the physical world an illusion. A lot of people want to do that, but we're not too eager to do that because we think the reality of your world is really worth noting. We think it's worth living. You do too. That's why you keep coming forth within it. This leading edge where physical flesh meets non-physical energy, this leading edge where contrast inspires the desire and you summon the energy forth into manifestation, oh, this is a good place to be, you see. It is reality. We think that the example that you gave us as you began here today says it all. So here's a little girl watching a movie. And she's watching a movie that has some contrast in it so that her desire is really heightened. And then when the movie gives her a manifestation of the free Willy and she feels the exhilaration of all of that, oh, what a meaningful experience that was for her. And then you notice that that's exactly the way you feel about the idea of releasing all of the entrapments of the physically focused body, leaving behind anything that is doubt or worry or anything that feels the least bit unfree, while you reemerge into your true knowledge of freedom, you see. And we say, you got to admit that the big picture and the leading edge physical picture are the same picture. In this physical format, we are all living microcosms of the greater picture, you see. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. We want you to be aware that anything that you have been asking about, we have answered intimately. More than once. More than twice. And it's easy for us to tell you that because we only have one answer. And we just give it to you over and over again in great, and you've got to admit, delightful variety. We want you to accept that you are creators in the same way that you would accept that you are a sculptor or a musician or an author or a screenplay writer or a builder of bridges or a cooker of meals. In other words, we want you to accept that you are a creator in the most real sense of the word. And we want you to feel that the creative energy that creates all things, that makes all things happen, is easily accessible to you, that you have been granted the right and the clearance and the absolute source expectation of doing wonderful things with whatever part of the energy you care to utilize. We want you to understand that there has been no assignment made for you, that there's not a big pile of things that you are supposed to move from one place to another, or there's not this expected list of things that you are supposed to create. You came forth with this very clear environment and clear intent that went just like this. You said, I think going forth will be the most exciting thing I can think of. So I would like to expose myself to these circumstances, to these varieties of ideas and beliefs and intentions and lifestyles. And I would like to focus closely enough that I gather personally from my vantage point ideas, preferences, understanding unquestionably that Source will hear my request and answer me instantly. And I understand that my environment, therefore, will be modified by me moment by moment by moment. And I'm doing this not because the environment needs to be modified. I'm doing this not because I will be unfulfilled if I don't. I'm not doing it because I need these marks on some chart in order to achieve some level of perfection that some master will assign me. I will do these things because it will be joyful to do them. I'll build the bridges that are fun to build. I'll cook the meals that are fun to cook. I'll have the relationships that are fun to have. I will grow. Oh, I know I will grow. I will not be able to help but expand. I will not be able to help but contribute. I will not be able to help but add into this time-space reality. I know I will be of immense value, but I'm not coming forth because of the value that I will offer, because that is a given. And I'm not coming forth to prove anything because there is nothing to prove. I'm coming forth because this looks like a vacation I'd like to take. I think there will be some fun here. I think there will be some interest stirred. I think that more life will flow through me. I think that this is going to be a really good time. Therefore, I go forth. That's what you said. That's why you're here. That's why we're all here. It is for the joy. And when you get your eye on the joy, everything else will fall into place. There is great love here for you. We are complete.